Pretty loud noise, so everybody should can hear me. But if you have not gotten any food yet, please do so because we're about to start soon. Let us know like when it is online.
Welcome everyone. Oh, me on live TV, or live. Well, Kenrick, I'm the programs chair for the board of Women in Bio, and I welcome you all here. I thank you, Sage, for such an amazing event here and hosting us. Katie has been wonderful at getting us all set up so quickly. Sarah's been amazing getting all the food ready for everyone. But then we also have the pleasure of having both Girl Up as well as Sage representatives here today too to present on thinking about generative AI and healthcare, which is of course a huge topic with many, many, many people right now, many companies. All right, let's see if I can get this to move forward. Doesn't like me. Oh. Okay, so Women in Bio, our mission as an organization to support the professionals, promoting careers, leadership, entrepreneurship for all women and our allies in the life sciences. And we do that in many different ways. We want to really build a group of wonderful leaders in the life science companies with the diverse stakeholders that we work with, as well as that we provide for here at Women in Bio. Now, there's several programs that we do for Women in Bio. One is for the mentors and mentees. We have a MAPS program, which is where I've met some very wonderful people that I still stay connected with. Great opportunity. They're actually doing something next week virtually. So if you want to get involved in that, working with a career coach. So a wonderful program there. We also, I saw some of the reps from our youth program here. I know they have a big one coming up with the aerospace scientists for our young ones to kind of encourage women into the aerospace engineering, as well as many other different aspects. So wonderful group. We have our Executive Women in Bio as well as EMAPS program. So the Executive Women in Bio is really to get the executives here in the Seattle area connected, as well as connected with nationals. But also we have the EMAPS program, which I went through, is wonderful, really helping us month after month working on projects. So for those that are like director level and moving into, hoping to move into more of a C-suite position and boardroom ready and all those other positions that we have. And for entrepreneurs. And so that's why it's so wonderful that we have the program here today. All right, lots of success. And I won't read all the stats for you, but even we just launched a new website too. So we really have been able to, particularly here in Seattle, I mean, we have over 150 people registered today. So wonderful opportunities. We have many more things coming up this year. Gone through this. Of course, it all works on volunteers. So it's a wonderful opportunity to meet new people in the area. It's the board is all volunteer at the local level. We do have some representatives that are paid at the nationals to really keep the organization going and well financed. So, but it also takes our sponsors. So we have many, and I think we have a representative from almost every one of our sponsors here today. So we will be reaching out. We do want to highlight all of you. So as you have things that come available, we would love to work with all of you in building the recognition of all the work that you do, as well as continuing to build a strong networking networking opportunity here in Seattle. You can follow us on Instagram, Our communications committee is amazing. They have just done a great LinkedIn launch in this last production of all of our opportunities. So keep that in mind. We do have a survey, and we want to hear what you want coming up. So make sure and enter that survey to give us the feedback. And then I want to put a plug for our next one, May 1st. This is actually brought to you by one of our representatives on the board, and it is about the science of investment, because as we know, many of you moving from job to job, and you're worried about the science that in your lab, we also want to help you with that investment opportunities. So that'll be coming up, and I'm from NanoString, so it'll be at NanoString. So, we'll have a wonderful opportunity, some appetizers, some drinks, and hope you can join us. We also have another one coming up in June to be announced as far as finalizing the date and time, but Summer Social, and that's just for fun. Come and have some fun in Capitol Hill. It is sponsored by the city of Seattle. They're trying to bring more people engaged in the downtown area, so we have a wonderful event planned then at the Soul Repair in Capitol Hill. All right. I think nope, I didn't skip a slide. There is a code for us to scan at the end to we want to get your feedback, so that you'll see that at the end. All right, I'm going to hand it off.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna. I am the founding president of Girl Entrepreneurs. So a little bit about Girl Up. Our mission is to building a empowering ecosystem for seasoned and future women entrepreneurs, and providing nurturing space for networking, mentoring, and training. Our vision, which is our long-term goal, is to revolutionize the tech industry for ensuring every cutting-edge tech startup embrace inclusive leadership with at least one woman in a founder or executive role. So currently, we have over 100 mentors in our system, and we have connected over 1,200 members and supported more than 90 companies. And these companies have in fundraising have been over 45 million and 105 million in economic values. And so, as I mentioned before, our mission is not just for seasoned founders. We also want to build pipeline for future founders. So we're very excited to announce we're going to launch a program, the AI Startup Bootcamp for Women. Yeah, so if you guys are interested about this program, reach out to me through LinkedIn. I will tell you more little details. Yeah. All right, this is the pictures from our previous event. And I also want to just talk a little bit background about myself. I'm originally from China. Before I moved to here, I worked for a company called the CALT. It's comparable to NASA and the SpaceX here. After I moved to here, I actually started 3 different tech startups. They're all venture-backed startups. But now I felt like that my passion is really to build this female founders community. So this year I decided to full-time work on Girl Up Entrepreneurs. And also we're very exciting. We just opened a chapter in San Francisco. And in my personal life, I also like dancing. So this is a little bit fun fact. I created Girl Up Dance Crew, which is a group of people that entrepreneurs and also volunteers who love dancing. So if any of you are interested, feel free to contact me. Yeah. How do you connect to our community? So first, I would encourage you guys, open your phone, scan our event calendar. So we also have an upcoming event. It's startup competition, pitch competition in April 6th. Yeah, so if you guys wanted to learn more, feel free to subscribe our calendar. And also because we're a 501c3 nonprofit, we're happy to accept donations and also volunteering and mentoring. Yeah, so if you guys want to join our Discord channel, connect to our members from other cities, feel free. And also follow our LinkedIn pages. Thank you. All right. So.
Hi, everyone. So another Anna here. I'm a director at Sage Bionetworks, your host for tonight. I have been at Sage for about 6 years, and actually I was part of the Women in Bio program. I went through a MAPS program about a decade ago when I was looking to transition out of academia. And life kind of gets in the way of my continued involvement, but this is a good reminder I should rejoin your group because it's just a fantastic opportunity for networking and making connections in the area. So Sage Bionetworks is a trusted leader in data sharing and reuse. So we have been around for about a decade and a half, and we focus on promoting open science approaches. And one of the major ways we do that is through facilitating the sharing and reuse of data. And our mission is really to drive a new age of discovery through really truly open science and radical collaboration. And we really want to create a world where silos, both within and across science and technology, no longer exist. So one of the things that we're noticing is that, within biology, you have domain-specific silos that form, and then certainly there's a huge silo between healthcare research and the AI community. And I think we're going to hear a lot more about that, breaking that down today. So some of the ways that we try to break these silos and make a connection between data contributors and the end users of that data are through our three kind of pillars. So one is we have a tech infrastructure platform that facilitates data sharing and collaboration. We have a data governance team that really helps think about ways to share data in a way that respects patient rights and privacy. And then we have scientists and community coordination efforts to help work with our end user communities, work with the data contributors, and put everything in the context of the scientific question. I think this needs. So this is an image that's on our kind of newly launched website. And it really is aimed to show that the Synapse platform, which is our data sharing platform, sits at the center of this universe of projects that we support. A lot of our projects are funded by the National Institute on Health, other federal funding agencies, not foundations, and even some pharma partners. And we work to connect scientists with each other through this main data sharing platform, which is called Synapse. So Synapse has, when it was first launched about a decade ago, was intended to be free for researchers and to really enable free use of and sharing of data with the broader community. And we still maintain that basic free plan where any researcher who has to share their data, maybe to comply with their grant requirements, can come and share their data with the broader community and do so in a secure and protecting human health, protected health information, respecting those policies. And we also have several other plans where we work with really large groups of researchers to help them organize and share massive amounts of data from genomics, imaging, and other types of data modalities. I specifically work on Alzheimer's disease, and we have worked for about a decade on a data sharing consortium that generates cutting-edge omics-related data for Alzheimer's disease, and we share that with the broader community through a knowledge portal that we have created. And we continue to try to expand the Synapse ecosystem to help create additional portals for the community, and then importantly to break down the silos between these different domain-specific portals and help accelerate reuse of the data. And so how can you learn more about what Sage does? Follow us on these various social media platforms, and we'd love to stay in touch. So with that.
We do have some more seats over here. few of you want to move over. It's not the best view over here, but you have your own mic, so.
Yeah, I do. Maybe we can kind of distribute the 3 mics as well there. But thank you, again, Margaret, and to Anna's for kicking us off today. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. So I know that we're kind of right after the dinner or about like during your dinner time. So hopefully this topic is exciting enough that exceeds any dinner effect. Okay. A little bit about me. I'm today's moderator. My name is Kay Du. You can call me Kay, like the letter K. I'm a senior product manager at Apple. So I'm super passionate about the intersection between humanity and technology. I have my Master of Public Policy at University of Michigan and then my MBA through Georgia Tech. So in today's discussion, I'm not only interested in the technology side of Gen AI, but I'm also super passionate about the policy implication of Gen AI in healthcare. So in my spare time, I'm a moderator for one of our organizers, so Girl Up Entrepreneurs. So that's how I got connected. And I was super excited when I saw the dance video because I love dancing and I'm part of it. And also on the more fun part, I'm a career coach as a part-time. So if you're looking for a job right now, stay at the end of the event and contact me. And also, I love dancing and I love writing as a blogger. Okay, so as you can see here, we have 3 panelists today with very rich and diverse backgrounds in healthcare. So we're going to have each of them to quickly kind of introduce themselves. And then I have prepared a couple of questions for them. And then we're going to open up for the audience. So do save your questions till the end. All right, so who wants to go first? Oh, the slides.
Okay, so I'm Ann Nowakowski. I am based at Sage Bionetworks, and I sit on our governance team. So day to day, I think a lot about privacy, and I think a lot about responsible use of health data. And so that's why I'm sitting here today. And we at Sage have, as mentioned by Anna, have really tried to break down silos across scientific fields, but also between science and technology. And so AI is an area where we are really trying to grow our research at Sage, but also be able to promote the work of all of our collaborators. We have a lot of really rich data that we help manage, and we want to be able to facilitate the discovery, the innovation, the collaboration, the reuse in such a way that really truly impacts human health. And so I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you.
Awesome. Stephanie.
Hello, Stephanie Simmons. So I work at Microsoft Research. I work in the Health Futures team. We are a mission-focused team within the general Microsoft Research organization, and our mission is to bring about AI precision, AI-enabled precision health. So I've been working within that organization for about 7 years. I went through a career change before that. My background is in law, so I practiced law for a long time in law firms and then in-house at Microsoft for 8 years, and then left and came back again, kind of to my surprise, to my dream job within Microsoft Research. So there I have worked on a number of different things relating to compliance. Didn't really expect to find myself in health, to be honest. I've been doing healthcare at Microsoft now for about 5 years, and it's just been a fascinating and continuous learning process. And so I'm really pleased to be here with all of you, and thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Cronin. I'm with the AI2 Incubator. We're a pre-seed startup incubator and early stage investors. So we work with really early stage founders, help them launch their ideas or commercialize their ideas and invest in those companies. I lead our sciences practice there. So I'm working with all of our biotech and our healthcare companies. Broadly, the AI2 Incubator, we'll work with any team that has AI at their core, and that can be in any industry, but again, has to have AI. But I tend to work with our healthcare and our biotech ones. Before that, I was a product manager at NanoString. And before that was doing my PhD, which is what brought me out here to Seattle and did my PhD in bioengineering at UW.
Thank you so much. Super impressive. I'm already very excited. I don't know about you all. This is a very interesting topic for me. So personally, I did a little bit of work with AI, but I think mostly just from like a user perspective or like a human being perspective, right? In today's world, I have a ChatGPT account. Probably like 100, 200 million people in today's world now. And as a blogger, again, like I love writing. As a blogger, I tend to find myself like relying more and more on ChatGPT to just look up for things to write about, talking points, or research on certain topics. And interestingly, last night, my dad was asking me, "Hey, like, are you using ChatGPT for your writing?" The reason that he's asking, he doesn't want me to overstretch myself beyond work. And he wants to maximize my efficiency in my hobby. And I'm like, Dad, like that's a very kind of a typical Asian dad thing. Well, I don't want to overgeneralize. I hope there is no hard feeling for Asian dad here. The point here is that my dad is never an AI or a technology person, but he's paying attention to it. That basically just speaks about how ubiquitous Gen AI is. Right? Like I think last year was still kind of a niche topic and wrapped in a bubble, but today it is everywhere. So today we're going to talk about what Gen AI means and its impact in the healthcare space. All right, so my first question, and also I think to help the audience to just get a sense of the lay of the land for Gen AI, what are some of the major applications of Gen AI that you think at the top of your mind? And do you want to go first? I'm just going to go up people.
Just to promote some of the women in the room who also work at Sage, we are looking at AI applications, and Janita over there is interested in exploring digital twin studies. I have a colleague who wasn't able to make it tonight, Meg, who's very interested in ethical provenance and the ethical context under which data is collected and reshared and redistributed for model development. So for us, because of where we sit, we're very much in the sort of development phase, not necessarily the deployment, but our collaborators in this space are also very much interested in developing. I mean, we've talked about precision medicine for at least a decade now, and so it's very exciting to think that AI can continue to carry us through that threshold of precision medicine. And so I'm actually interested to hear what some of my colleagues have to say about that.
Yeah, awesome.
I mean, I think there's more opportunities than we could name tonight. I think there's all sorts of spaces and opportunities, applications for generative AI in healthcare and biotech space. When I think about it, I often think about healthcare as in applications for health systems, for physician practices, for clinicians, and then the biotech applications being things akin to, drug discovery, clinical trial space. Now, within both of those, I think areas where there's been a lot of activity and interest on the healthcare side of things, like our health system in the US spends hundreds of billions of dollars on the administrative side. So there's, I think, a lot of opportunities there to leverage generative AI, leverage these new tools to remove some of that burden and cost. And then kind of going back to some of the life sciences and biotech space, there's been a lot of companies coming up in drug discovery and drug development tools. I think we're going to see more of those. And then I'll say, here sitting in Seattle, of course, with the IPD, the Institute for Protein Design, that's also an example of the use of a lot of AI, generative AI, as well for protein development or structure and characterization.
Yeah, you covered kind of the landscape that I've been thinking about as well. I mean, I sort of think about it, the use cases. We learn a lot from our customers and partners. You sort of think, the medical community and life sciences community are the ones that come up with the use cases rather than Microsoft. But I mean, obviously, we have copilots built in our productivity tools, and so we all use them every day in our work, and I think that's really helpful to the industry. So, if you think about it from a risk perspective, kind of on the lower end is the more administrative or back office kind of tasks, email management, perhaps, or like pre-authorization in healthcare, and that sort of thing, which we've all heard a lot about. And I think that's the low hanging fruit. And then if you kind of go from there towards the higher risk, you can, we have a product. In fact, this was one of the first things I worked on in Microsoft Healthcare when it was just a research project and it wasn't really a real product, which is the DAX product by Nuance. That's the Dragon Ambient Experience, which is we're piloting it with customers, and it's meant to alleviate the physician and clinician burden for documentation. So listening to a clinical encounter and then generating the physician's notes, which they would then review and sign off on. So always a human in the loop, but that is, I think, going to be a really, really impactful area. And it's, for me personally, and I can speak for other people who I worked with on this project years ago, and it was called Project Empower MD at the time. This was a dream, this is sort of a dream come true that it was hard work back when it was just a research project before generative AI came along. So getting the training data, figuring out like which areas of medicine will this work with, all the different speech and language issues with the models, interpreting those things. And then sort of higher risk end of things. Well, and then you've got sort of protein engineering and obviously things like digital twins or, that sort of thing would be amazing. That'll be incredible. And someday we'll get there probably, but yeah. And of course, like diagnostic and treatment decisions. I mean, obviously those are like super high risk at this point. I mean, and you can have some clinical decision support systems, which I think I think they're regulated and, as a medical device often. So there's kind of a fine line there, but I think those things will just continue to be, very impactful and evolve, and the safety framework we need to have around that will continue to take shape.
I love that you also mentioned in your daily work, because I'll be honest, I use AI to learn about AI. and I think a lot of folks too, like our parents.
Exactly. I actually looked up this question in ChatGPT. You guys are spot on. Like drug discovery, like all the preventative health, like personalized medicine, I think like some operational kind of efficiency. You guys hit most of the points from ChatGPT. So that checked out. So I want to flip coin a little bit, and you touched upon kind of the regulation a little bit. I think that's a big topic for Gen AI. Obviously, like Gen AI holds great promise, right, for improving like healthcare outcome, operational management, whatever. But the technology itself also like raises increasing concern about data privacy, data biases, accountability issues, also according to ChatGPT. So what are some of the major kind of ethical, legal, or regulatory kind of challenges that needs to be considered now?
Okay, and I'll let you take the ethical part, and I'll take the regulation part maybe or something. So as I think about this kind of in three buckets, I guess. So there's from a technology company perspective, right now we are basically self-regulating. I mean, you might say we've made a lot of voluntary commitments, and we're basically doing right by the data that we're processing and the models that we're releasing. So our responsible AI program at Microsoft has been in existence since, I guess, I mean, I was originally trained in that program when it first started, so probably at least 5 years. I think it's been, maybe now, it's been a while. So we follow the responsible AI principles of accountability, transparency, fairness, privacy and security, reliability and safety, and inclusiveness. Those are our principles. And then we have a really robust program where we do review product and open source releases and anything that we make available through that program. And really, it's like very case specific, the analysis. So So that's kind of one way perspective. Another perspective in terms of regulation is that there isn't a lot of regulation. So there's sort of the horizontal type of regulation, like the EU AI Act, which, will apply, and we're still interpreting that. We all are, I think, trying to understand what that means for us and what the scope and applicability of that is. But sort of high-risk systems, prohibited kinds of uses and systems, and then like more general purpose. So that's one of the only horizontal regulation out there. We've got the Biden, obviously, executive order, which is addressing various sectors and risks with frontier models. And so I think the federal agencies are all busy doing some work pursuant to that order and putting together proposals for policy. And then within the medical community, I think it is also about trying to figure out what the best practices are as they sort of police themselves as well. And you have various organizations that come together to share best practices. There was one announced, Microsoft is a technology enabler for this organization that was just announced a week or two ago at HIMSS that was called Train, Trustworthy, and Responsible AI Network. And it's really just, there's a bunch of providers involved there. And again, about thinking about how to operationalize responsible AI and share best practices. And so I think those kinds of efforts, CHAI is another one, Coalition for AI in Healthcare came out with a blueprint. So those are the kinds of things that are happening, I think. So I'll stop and let you.
Yeah, I was reading the press release about Train, and there are a lot of collaborators involved, and so that's really exciting. CHAI is another good one. We recently got involved with Google's Croissant for metadata of training data and models themselves. So we're hoping to lead a health and bio portion of that and responsible AI. But what I will say is that in my day-to-day, because of where I sit, there are two main issues that I'm at least grappling with today. One being, I've really had to level up my own understanding of general training data and how the health data that we manage can also be used for training purposes. But we are subject to so many more laws and regulations around how health data is shared. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is the models themselves don't forget. I can forget. I can forget your name. If anybody introduced themselves to me at the start of this evening, I was thinking about the panel. I can tell you I've forgotten your name. But a machine will not forget the data that it was trained on. And so there is not zero risk of having that data exposed. And so when we share health data that's often controlled because of the sensitivity and the nature of that data, how then do we gate or how then do we regulate the models that are trained on it? So do we ban those models? I don't think so. Do we ask that those models remain localized? In that case, there's no scalability. The scale is at issue. Do we focus on synthetic data? I think that's an area that some of our team members are really interested in exploring, but then context, you lose context there. Do we want to gate access to those models? Maybe that's a good sort of middle ground at this point in time. But then there's also this other avenue that I know Microsoft and other big companies are exploring around vault architecture so that we can ensure that that data is protected in a way that does not put each individual in this room's data at risk. And so we know that in the health space, a lot of people want to donate their data because their loved one has a diagnosis, because they themselves have a rare disease. And so we want to be a part of that race for a cure. And we don't want to, turn out the lights. It is a black box. I mean, on some level, yes, we're talking about black box data, but we want to make sure that that data is maintained in a way that is respectful of the dignity and rights, especially as we think about multiple jurisdictions. We have in the US, HIPAA and other human subjects regulations, but then GDPR has really shaped the privacy framework that we all adhere to. And then the other, I'll just say really quickly, the other issue that I've been trying to think about is an issue of provenance. And so as we think about primary health research data, at what point then does that get transformed and reprocessed in such a way that the risk to privacy is minimized? Again, though, while respecting the health and dignity and rights of each individual who's contributed that data. So.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely it is like a black box, and I think everybody has felt that. But I think like even just on data sharing, training all the data, there's already like such a strict kind of like process of guardrailing it. What about like commercialization of data, right? I mean, yeah, I know you're popping your eyes now. There's so much, just the sheer amount of data that models can have access to. You know that who the patient is and what he or she has been experiencing. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of commercialization kind of opportunities related to it. So what's the responsible or acceptable use of those data?
So yeah, I'll touch on that question in a second. I was actually going to say, in addition to all the like ethical and kind of regulatory reasons you both have talked about, there's, I think, a lot of just commercial reasons, commercial reasons that companies, startups, and large companies want to and are thinking about this, because it is incredibly hard to go in front of a health system and say, I'm going to launch this product with you and not have answers for how you're going to protect that data. And because there still isn't a lot of regulation, there aren't strict guidelines for a health system to say like, I need to do A, B, C, and everything will be covered. And none of them, for good reasons, like want to be the center of a PR story about how like someone's personal information got out there in a non-de-identified way, accidentally. So there's just pure reasons of like doing a good job and ethical reasons that we need to figure this out, but it's also like critical for getting a product out there into systems that have spent a long time thinking about patient privacy. Okay, but now I've lost the original data.
Yeah. Okay, so next I want to kind of switch gear a little bit, and Jenny, I want to start this question with you. So I want to kind of really look into the startup space of Gen AI in healthcare. So Jenny, I know that, as a principal at AI2 incubators, you've seen a lot of like startup ideas. What are some of the cool startup companies or ideas right now?
There are, there are a lot of interesting ideas out there. I can share one of our teams that recently sort of came out of stealth that it touches in this space. So Preemptive AI, and what they're doing is building a model that can help understand and predict patient outcomes by looking at physiological or bio signal data that you capture in a wearable or from your smartphone. And so absolutely uses AI and deep learning techniques, but you can imagine where things like that are interesting. There's both health systems and payers, so like insurance providers, have reasons to want to understand and be incentivized to understand like who are your most at-risk patients. Because if you don't know who your most at-risk patients are, you can't help intervene and ideally decrease the cost of that person's care over time. So that's one example of, I think, a really exciting space. Others have been touched on. So there's been a lot of companies recently in the prior authorization space, the prior auth space. I think for a number of reasons. One, prior authorization is a clinically intensive process where you need folks who understand the patient's needs, and on the payer side, also understand clinical requirements to figure out if you authorize something. It's slow, it can slow down care, so it's bad. It's arguably not good for a patient. And actually, because of that, there's been a bunch of regulations in different states about how quickly a payer has to respond to prior authorization requests. And so there's been a lot of startups in that space. Other areas that you've touched on, Stephanie, are like in the scribing and clinical documentation space. So Nuance at Microsoft, Abridge is a startup that recently closed a large round, both that can allow a physician to be in, or a clinician to be in the patient room, listen into that encounter with the patient, and then document, the notes that you would imagine reading in your electronic health record, that today clinicians are often typing afterwards, generating those automatically.
Well, that's exciting. And where do you see are the kind of the appetites from the investors right now? Are there like specific areas that they're focused on or interested in?
I think that's very investor dependent, like kind of specific, like niche areas they're interested in. I think though largely they're going to think about a couple of things. What's the total like market size for that space? And can those founders go solve that pain point really, really well and be the best company out there solving that pain point? How fragmented the space is, right? Are there, and how much competition is there? Is it likely a space where there could be a winner takes all, like 1 or 2 or 3 companies end up with like the majority of the market share? And then what's the other competition? How many startups have there been in that space? And then finally, I think everyone is thinking a lot about like this founding team. Do they have a insight? And that could be based on their past experience in the space or something else, but some insight that would make you believe they're going to be able to solve this problem better than other folks out there trying to solve it.
Yeah, for sure. That you actually like kind of answered my next question about like what are the factors that investors are looking into, right, or taking into consideration when they pick and choose which company to invest in. So just looking at the landscape right now for the startup, right, or just the whole kind of a Gen AI in healthcare, like how do the startups currently like compete with big companies like Microsoft with a ton of resources?
We can both talk about this maybe. I mean, I think.
My next question is with Stephanie.
So I think that this can be answered on a couple of levels. So one is traditionally, I mean, and I think I'm making a huge generalization here, but startups as a small team can have the ability to be very nimble and move quickly. And they can also have the ability to find like a really specific problem and go solve that in sort of like an end-to-end use case. And that not always, but that can sometimes be a little bit more challenging for a large company that has many other products that they're also managing and under kind of that company's purview. So that's one approach. I think, and so I would put that into like, that's sort of like a really good application. You have figured out a huge pain point and you're solving that incredibly well. The other piece of that is the technical and like compute needed. So I think largely, if you're an application layer leveraging GPT-4 or other large language models that are commercially available, you still need a good bit of compute, but it's significantly less compute and thus less cost than if you were to build your own model. Now, some companies, some startups are still going to try to do that, but they're going to have to gain access to more cash more quickly to enable access to that compute. So there are groups. Incubator, we've recently announced a partnership with some cloud providers and data centers that will allow us to give each of our teams $1 million in compute, which can go a long ways. And that's, just one piece and like in the pie. But I think this is a way that we're trying to help startups be able to not only do application layers, but also if it's the right solution for them, have the compute to like build a model.
Yeah, I definitely think that the nicheness is kind of like the advantage that startup can really kind of leverage in a kind of like boomer and thrive in. So as I said, like the next question for Stephanie, like what do you think is the role that a big company such as Microsoft should assume or play in kind of promoting like a healthy collaboration or competition with startups?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think of us as competing with
Yeah, for lack of a better
startups,
word.
of course, but like more enabling. I mean, so I do work in the research organization where we aren't actually, selling products. We're doing deep collaborations in research with partners, and that's pretty much how we operate in terms of our work and our research is always with partners and really trying to move kind of the state of technology forward through like releasing publications or open source code or models, or just proving that things can be done so that the broader, and really kind of trying to help, I think, support and build out ecosystems so that the broader ecosystem can then take those innovations forward. Yeah, so I think that's the role of Microsoft, is to really enable the ecosystems in healthcare and life sciences, and to be that technology enabler. We spend a lot of money on, I think, obviously data centers, compute and processing power that we, can make available to customers, but then building foundation models, large models that require tons of resources to be able to.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of where we're focused in research, and I think that's something that would be hard for a startup to do. But it seems like, I mean, I'm not, a person working in venture space really. So, but I mean, the technology landscape is changing so rapidly. I feels like that's a big risk for startups. Probably is just like, you don't want to invest a lot in either a business model or a technology asset that then could become obsolete because like the next thing, so we'll see. We're in such a revolutionary time right now.
We were at a meeting not too long ago, all hands face-to-face meeting, and half the Harvard team were all wearing their VR goggles during the meeting, looking at 3D images of AI-assisted imagery. So I think that the technology does change, and for those of us in the privacy field, trying to stay abreast of all of those technology changes can be really challenging.
It's not Vision Pro, right?
No.
Okay, cut this from the video.
But I'll just add, I think this is where the technology is changing so quickly. In healthcare in particular, there's still so many pain points that have been around for a very long time, and those aren't changing as quickly. And we're trying to solve them with this new technology, but they're so ingrained that they're going to take a while to be solved. So I do think that's where like companies, it doesn't matter the size, in really identifying that problem and understanding it inside and out, like, and then trying to solve that, will see success eventually. Again, it's going to take a long time because these problems have been there for so long.
It's great that you're kind of calling out the commonality as well, kind of like solve the problems, identify the right problem to solve with the right technology. So speaking of like research, I know Stephanie and you're kind of like really in depth in this space. So what are some of the kind of R&D trends that we should all pay attention to right now?
I would say we are definitely paying attention to things like how would a particular molecule perform in this individual who is digitally generated from myself. And so being able to speed the forward momentum from an ideation to clinical trial, I think would be really exciting. I also think that from a Sage perspective, it's really who our collaborators are and what their interests are that also drive our use cases. So
I think in our world, some of the areas of promise, I guess, or like trends that we're thinking about a lot right now is just on the topic of real world data and kind of this potential for their, I mean, of course, I'm in health future, so we're thinking a lot about the future. It's not like tomorrow, but the promise of like this continuous learning system, where you can use real world data to really understand people holistically, to inform, treatment decisions, to feed into kind of drug development pipelines as well. So that's one, is just thinking about how we can use enable the use of real world data more effectively. Then I'd say multimodal models is another really big area because that is, again, going to be key to precision health, where you can take like pathology images and radiology and genomics and, you know, text, unstructured text in health records and just make sense of all of that, right? And so, you know, that's a big area of focus. I think also what I'm hearing in the research community too is just kind of improving on techniques that they use to train models with higher quality data, and techniques that enable actually like smaller models to perform as well as large models. So there's a lot of experimentation going on with that as well, which makes a lot of sense because then you can use less compute. And one of our researchers wrote a paper, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or so, that was called Textbooks Are All You Need. And they just kind of had simulated a creation of some textbooks and trained just on those so-called textbooks just as an experiment. And were made to find like this emergent properties that they had found in, you know, creating these large models that were trained on much more, like multiple times more data. So that's promising from research perspective.
The spatial imagery, the spatial imaging sector is just growing, and that's where the, you know, VR goggles are coming from. And so the other thing too that's impacting all of this is, of course, we all want data, more data, more data, more data, which tends to put privacy at risk, but it also is this large ecosystem, at least for small nonprofits like us at Sage. How do we manage these stores of data? And how do people then engage with that data in a meaningful way when there's so much of it? So these spatial imaging files are just so incredibly dark.
Yeah. Like spatial models, and then it just blacked out. Do
The
you
universe
think
is telling us something.
It's quite epic.
Another ethical issue that I just feel like I think about a lot from a personal sort of consumer perspective is just, what does this all mean to patients and people, right? Like we're talking like from the industry kind of more perspective, but, you know, how to explain, you know, AI,
Exactly.
you know, and how it's being used, or is it not being used, or should be used, you know, and also like the ability of people to really use technology to educate themselves and understand. It's got a lot of ethical issues, right? But I think that's also got a lot of promise, right? So we have to be thinking a lot about both safety on the one side, and on the other side, kind of making sure that the benefits of AI are distributed, you know, equitably and accessible.
Yeah, for sure. Because I was thinking about actually like a specific example. My uncle was recently diagnosed with cancer, and I was asking him like how detailed the doctor is explaining to you about the complexity and everything like that. And I'm thinking about how Gen AI is going to make it more complicated, right? There is already kind of like a fine line how technical you can get with your patient. But if you, for example, a treatment plan is being formulated by some AI models, how are you going to kind of explain that to a patient? And more fundamental question is that, does a patient have a right to know all of these details and information?
Yeah, your family, let's use them as an example. Like, to your point, we didn't, as a general population, know a lot about AI.
Right.
So I do think about how this will impact the ways in which we consent participants in research, because it's very much a key philosophy for all of us in doing research and managing research data, this concept of explicit consent. And so how do you obtain explicit consent and explain something as complex as AI? So I do have a lot of curiosity around how our consent processes will continue to evolve. And then to your point around consent, so another woman in the room who is doing work around dynamic consent and e-consent, my colleague Christine, who is our VP of governance, looking at how we can engage participants on a study-by-study level to say to them, here's an opportunity for secondary use of your data, because at the end of the day, there's always this question of who owns the data, and that was one of the reasons why I came to Sage. That was one of the questions that prompted me here. Who owns the data? I mean, at the end of the day, it's my data, it's your data, it's our data. And so do we then get to engage in the research in such a way that we can consent for this study but not that study? In addition, in some of my previous work with patient associations, you would see folks move through this sort of maturity model. So you're confronted with a diagnosis immediately, and there's this sort of shock, and you move through those stages of grief. And then when you come out of it, you start talking to other people. And so that's a great opportunity for, at least in my previous life, for us to engage patients and try and help educate them. And then they start to learn more about the disease, and they engage in with their physicians in a slightly different way. And then they engage with each other in a slightly different way. And over time, you start to see a lot of those patient associations then coming to the table around clinical trial development. And then after coming here, I realized, oh, okay, the next phase of that patient maturity model is around data. And how do we engage individuals in how their data is being used? And that is another really exciting frontier for me and for those of us at Sage.
Yeah, that's awesome. I already saw some like eager hands trying to ask their questions. I'm just like checking the clock. I promise this is the last question from me. So my last question is about personal commitment, because I want the audience to take away, like at the end of this event, like some professional, some like career aspirations, right, to help you kind of keep devoting into this space. So can you tell us, just share some of your kind of story and your insights about like what motivates you? Obviously, this is a very exciting space to be in, but what is motivating you to work in health AI right now?
Change the world. Isn't that why we all do it?
I just was going to say, like, this isn't. Kids are going to college now, and if I were you, I would major in biology. Like, I just feel like that is where it's at, right? Because there's still so much that isn't known, right? And now there are tools to understand that. So I was a philosophy major, which, I mean, the fact that I am in my dream job just goes to show you that, like, if you're a philosophy major, you probably can still be okay. But anyway, law school back in the days of like the early internet, where like all there was Amazon.com, and selling books, right? So I've been through that revolution in technology. And then I did an LLM, a master's of law degree in information technology law. So yeah, I've just always loved technology because it's just so exciting. It's always so dynamic, what it can enable, what it can let us do things more efficiently so we can spend more time doing the things we love to do. But I think healthcare is just so inspiring because, yeah, I mean, it is, at the end of the day, that's our health is like the most important thing to, so I think, changing the world, that's a great answer. So I just wanted to say, like, I'm a fan of biologists and bio people, and I wish I was one of you, but probably won't go back to school again at this point of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just incredible opportunity here. My personal view, I think our healthcare system is broken. I think there are opportunities to leverage technology and AI specifically to try to fix some of those problems. And in the life sciences, there is so much we still don't understand. And there's so much information out there that I think, again, leveraging technology, leveraging AI is probably the path forward as we understand more and more. And then the slightly deeper reason is when I was doing my PhD, I just got really interested in how you actually get ideas out of labs. So the thing that motivates me for the specific work I do, working with like early stage founders, is how do you not have some really interesting innovation like live and die with a thesis? And instead, like, how do you get that out of the lab? How do you get it commercialized so it can go help patients, help clinicians, or more broadly, like help consumers?
Awesome. So my key takeaway is that philosophy is okay to be major in, and let's all change the world. All right. Well, let's open up for question Q&A.
So we make sure we hear all the questions.
Yeah, and please introduce yourself and how relevant in this space so that we can know you better.
Hello, my name's Sally James. I'm a journalist. One of the questions I have, any one of you could answer is, do we need the prototype IRB for example, the patients sharing the data in a way that's creating a model, just like you, and I think you referred to the difficulty of consenting. And some of you may not know, an IRB is deciding how clinical research can be ethically conducted. So I'm just asking, do we have already, has someone written organized a consent?
So I'm not the IRB expert in the room, but what I will say is that it's important to have so many different people at the table. Silos in this work is a danger to us all. And so having the right people at the table for those conversations around how the research is being conducted and the impacts on individuals, I think is just really important in that IRB model. That's a great question, Sally.
Yeah, and I know that can cause the data to be biased too. So I was at Genentech when we were first developing Herceptin, and then Kadcyla. Yeah, I'm old, I know. But was we could collect a lot more DNA here, and then in certain countries they limited the actual data. And as a woman, much of our healthcare and for women was limited for a while, and that's starting to catch up. But then now we're going to have certain countries that are not going to necessarily be contributing to a lot of the building of the AIs for some of this. So that is one of my concerns, having been in one of the first specialized therapeutics in development. Okay.
So my question is regarding digital biomarkers.
Hey, you probably want to turn it up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so hi, I'm Disha. I work at Microsoft. So I am interested in digital biomarkers. Do you see that with Gen AI, digital biomarkers will play as important a role as physiological biomarkers to diagnose, mitigate, and treat an illness? And by digital biomarker, I mean the digital data that surrounds a person these days is huge. So do you see a trend in harnessing that data to fill up the data gaps that we have been talking about?
I think so. I don't know. I think that could take some time. My guess is the areas, and this is just a guess, that the areas that will see more development earlier on will be indications that don't have great biomarkers. So things in mental illness, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and so there are ways in the cognitive impairment space like Alzheimer's and related dementias where you go work with a neurologist or someone trained in neurology to do a deep questionnaire and on paper. I think those are the things, actually some of that is already trying to be digitized, or things that where you'll see innovation first is my guess, because I think they lack the more traditional blood-based or image-based biomarkers.
My name's Katie Wisney. I just finished a PhD focusing on nursing and digital biomarkers, but I was wondering what your organizations or the startups that you work with, what strategies you are using to protect yourself from malicious data that could potentially poison training data sets when we start to get, we're using models that pull from really wide, broad, crowdsourced type sources or public sources. Are there any strategies that you are using or your clients use to protect from that?
Yeah, good question.
So one of the things that we're exploring, we had a conversation just today about data representativeness, data quality. And so for us at Sage, that is two of the metrics that are important for us to be able to capture, especially as we continue to curate more and more data and process more and more data and harmonize all of these different multimodal data types. I think that's my best answer.
Just say, from Microsoft perspective. So the data that we use is either open source data or it's data that we're getting from a partner who is, ensuring that there's integrity. We have provenance. There's a data onboarding process that we go through with a lot of compliance checks. So really looking at the quality of data that we use in the company. We're not scraping it. I think we have policy against that. But yeah, but I mean, it's a good question for like startups, who might not have a process for really looking at data provenance. That's an issue for sure. I don't know what the good frameworks are that would be available for startups for that, but
Yeah, I can't speak to any frameworks. I'm just not personally aware of them, but I know for our teams that are in the bio and health space, they have, for those that need to access data as opposed to building something on top of existing large language models, have absolutely been thinking about the sources of that data, if it's in the health space, the representation of that, the demographic representation of that data. And a recent conversation I had with a number of our startups, not just in the health space, but was around the importance of establishing metrics for this particular solution that you're building to assess performance, but across kind of all of the factors of that of that product and solution. So not just overall accuracy, but there's a lot of different questions you could be asking of a model. And understanding those metrics that you should care about as you assess the data that's going into your system.
You mentioned the healthcare system is broken. I don't think it takes a PhD to realize that. US spends vastly more than any other country and has poor results. And it's a multi-payer system that has a lot of complexity and data is siloed, et cetera, et cetera. And AI is obviously going to be a lot of use, but there's a lot of other technologies that are not being utilized. So what's why now in terms of actually changing the system?
I mean, I can't say why now unless, the technology, because I think, as you said, it's complex economic incentives, policy, lawmakers that need to agree on things, and such a vast system that we have here in the US. But I'm just hoping that if the technology appears to be promising enough, that actually can make things we've only dreamed about possible, people will be able to somehow come to find some agreements on how to actually enable the implementation of that, in a cost-effective and compliant and safe and responsible way. That's hope.
Yeah, I think, I guess the thing I would add is, this is my hopeful perspective, is AI today, large language models, probably future kind of foundational models have the potential to really improve efficiencies. So if you look back over a lot of digital health innovations in the past decade or so, very few, maybe none, have decreased the overall cost of care. They've improved outcomes and helped different stakeholders in different ways, but very few have decreased overall expenditures. I think that there's an opportunity to leverage AI today to make things more efficient and to remove some of the more burdensome. And I guess that's part of why I talked about administrative costs first, is to just try to make some of those things more efficient. So hopefully, but it's an incentives thing, right? There's a lot of stakeholders in healthcare, and their incentives are very rarely aligned. So I think the solutions that actually decrease costs are going to have the team behind it is going to have a deep understanding of how those stakeholders' incentives play together and how you actually like try to decrease cost over time.
The only thing I'll add is because it hit the news recently, it's become maybe in some circles like it feels like a trend, but machine learning and AI has really been in development for decades. And so I guess, you know, it's not now is my response. We've been building towards this. And I think to your point, one of those technologies that I see come up repeatedly still today is blockchain. And, you know, we keep coming back to some of these technologies and then we depart from them and we come back to them. And AI is one of those things that, you know, it's been a long time since I've taken an economics course, but definitely the market is moving us in this direction. And so it does seem like a worthwhile business investment for even a nonprofit like ourselves.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, thank you for all your answers. It's been really cool. So my name's Daria, and I'm also a recent PhD grad, but I did more bio stuff, so lipid nanoparticles, stuff like that. Don't know a lot about AI, but a question that I have is when we're talking about those generative AI models, when they are being trained, do they have the capability to learn new stuff? Because if we're talking about, let's say, a diagnostic helper or a research helper, like they can be trained at all these big data sets that are available right now, but what if our hypotheses change later and like we learn new things? So is it even possible to make a system that would be able to learn as we go?
So I am not a computer scientist, but I work with them. So yes, it is. I know that. And I don't know if you guys have heard of this term RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So you can sort of like point the model to a set of data that you want it to reference in finding answers. So that's one way of overcoming like the time limit of a model. So I think there are other techniques, I mean, you can have it adapt and learn, which is part of the problem with like FDA regulation of the medical devices that adapt and learn. They haven't figured out how to regulate. So, but yes, I think the short answer is yes, from my point of view.
We're going to sneak in one more, then give you guys a break, unless you wanted to finish that. Jenny, did you want to finish? Okay.
My name is Peter, and we're building a telehealth startup, but with the difference is that we're helping people solve their health issues at their root for their specific body chemistry of the person. And we're starting with a specific issue of struggling to lose weight, and more for the female body, so for people who have been trying fasting and calorie restriction, exercise still doesn't work, so there's usually an underlying medical cause. And it is pretty complicated, but we're making great progress. And I've been thinking now, as I heard you talk, it'd probably be expediting the process if we were able to get a lot of data of people's bodies and who have this issue and make these connections. And we could obviously talk with people online and get data of actual patients and potential customers. But is there a way to get this data from other places? Like I know in Microsoft you work with partners, but with us, we don't have that credibility, I guess, to go to people. So how would you think about maybe getting data, or maybe from the startup perspective, if it's even worth trying to do that, getting data from other places to expedite the problem solving? Yeah.
Short answer is I think it's hard. The much longer answer is certainly some startups find ways to have data partnerships with and access data. But there's a couple of reasons why it's difficult. One is all of the like regulatory and ethical reasons around privacy and what that data is being used for. And the second piece is that it has to be the right data. And so I think it also can be really difficult to access a data set that has the all of the inputs that you would need in order to, that you would imagine your future kind of product needing, and therefore actually being the right data set for yourself.
And I'm just so impressed by our panelists for kind of the conversation and also like answering those questions so gracefully. So let's give applause, a round of applause to our panelists today. So I think that concludes today's like panel discussion, but do stay till the end of the event. I think it ends officially at 8 o'clock, and you can enjoy the food if there is anything left, and then come chat with us if you have more questions. I hope everybody has their key takeaways today, and keep enjoy the journey in the world of AI, whatever that journey is. Thank you.
Yeah, that was fun, right?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
When you can just bounce off each other. I like that a lot too.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of things.